I never imagined that a simple secretarial job could turn my life upside down. When he entered that room for the first time, something in the air changed, as if time had stretched, creating a space just for us. From that day on, everything became more intense. I was lost in a silent obsession, a discreet charm that only I knew how to hide. It was a rainy morning, the kind of gray day that made the office seem even more impersonal and distant. I was at my desk, on another one of those days when the hours seemed to pass like minutes. It was just another Monday, or at least I thought it would be. Then he walked in, without warning. The boss, Lucas Andrade. Even his name seemed charged with a force that I didn't know how to deal with. He was always calm, serious, but at the same time, it was impossible not to notice his presence. It wasn't just his impeccable clothes or the air of authority he exuded. It was something more, something I couldn't define. When he approached my desk and said with that subtle smile, "Good morning, Maria," something inside me exploded with a shiver. I knew he wasn't like the others. There was something different about him. He just smiled and walked away. But that exchange of glances was enough to put me in a constant state of nervousness. I began to observe his gestures, how he moved, how he spoke, how he gestured. It was all so safe, so firm. And I, a simple office worker, was mesmerized. In the days that followed, my interactions with Lucas began to become more frequent. He not only stopped by my desk to give orders, but he also began to call me for small tasks, to review documents, to schedule arrangements. I knew he was testing something, perhaps waiting for a response from me. But what did he want? He seemed to be watching my every move, and this left me increasingly disconcerted. "Maria, you always know exactly where to find everything. It's amazing." He said this one morning, in an almost personal tone, as if he were really analyzing me. It wasn't just a casual compliment. It was more like a confirmation of something bigger, that he was paying attention to me in a way that no one else did. And at the same time, the way he looked at me with that intensity, it was like he saw something in me that I myself couldn't yet understand. One afternoon, he asked me to stay a little later at the office, a simple task, just a few calls to make. But something in his tone of voice made me realize that it wasn't just another ordinary request. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt nervous. He asked me for a coffee, and in the silence of the empty room, the words began to flow unexpectedly. He began to tell me a little about his life, about his routine, about the challenges of work and his career. I, who had previously only seen him as a distant boss, began to see a layer of vulnerability that I hadn't known existed. It's funny how life takes us to places we never imagined, Maria. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth chasing all this. I found myself captivated. He was revealing a side that few saw, the human side, the side that wasn't in high-level meetings or corporate presentations. He wasn't just a boss, he was a man who seemed to be searching for something that not even he could find. I wanted to know more. I wanted to understand what he was feeling, what he thought about life, and more than that, I wanted him to see me, to see in me something more than the employee who always kept the room tidy. But things started to get complicated, especially when my admiration turned into something stronger, something I couldn't control. I started to observe his every move, every word, every gesture. Everything seemed to have a hidden meaning. Was he doing it on purpose? Did he know he made me feel this way? I started to analyze his reactions. And on some occasions, it seemed like he was in fact trying to get closer to me. But at the same time, he kept his distance. A light touch, a longer look, but nothing more. I was losing control, getting lost in a whirlwind of feelings that I didn't know how to deal with anymore. Then there was the day when, after a stressful meeting with the board, he called me to talk. I knew something was different. He was more tense, more close. "Maria, I need you to help me with something outside the office." I was speechless. He had never asked me anything like this before. My heart raced. "I need someone I trust. You would be the right person for an important mission." I accepted, of course. How could I not? Something inside me knew that this was the chance I had been waiting for. Something was building between the two of us, and I didn't know how far it would go. We went together to a corporate event where he had to represent the company. I was there, by his side, helping with the introductions, with the contacts, as I always did. But the tension between us seemed to grow. He was getting closer than necessary, and I could feel the heat of his presence. For a moment, he turned to me, his eyes piercing mine. "Maria, there's no way we can ignore what's going on here anymore, is there?" That was the moment I knew. He knew. He knew what I was feeling, and somehow, he was feeling it too. But the question that hung in the air was, what to do with this? The line between professional and personal was becoming increasingly blurred. I was about to cross a dangerous line. That night, something unexpected happened. Lucas took me out to dinner after the event. I knew it was an opportunity for something more, but I didn't know what he wanted from me. Over dinner, he talked about the pressure he felt as a boss, about the sacrifices he had made throughout his career. But the tone of his voice was different, softer, more intimate. I felt like he was inviting me into something deeper, more personal. When we got back to the hotel, he stood in the elevator entrance, looking at me with an intensity that almost took my breath away. "Maria, sometimes I feel like I can be more myself with you. You understand me in a way that no one else does." I didn't know what to say. The words wouldn't come. All I wanted was to go further. I wanted to know what he really felt, what he was willing to risk, what he wanted with me. But at the same time, there was a fear. I knew that if we crossed that line, there would be no going back. What would start as a subtle infatuation could turn into something much more dangerous, something that could destroy everything we had built up until then. That night left me with a lump in my throat. In the morning, Lucas acted as if nothing had happened. He was back to being the boss, strict, distant, unapproachable. I didn't know how to deal with it. We were in a power game. He tested me, challenged me, but at the same time, he kept me away. It was as if he was playing a game without rules, and I didn't know what the goal was. I felt lost. More and more, I was succumbing to my passion for him, but I didn't know if he felt the same. Sometimes he seemed to care, but at other times he would pull away as if he was giving me space, as if he was testing me. I no longer knew where admiration ended and desire began. And then, there was the moment that changed everything. When he called me to talk to him in his office with that intense look in his eyes. Something was about to happen, but what could it be? I knew all I wanted was for him to take me for himself, but was he ready to risk it all? I knew he knew the tension between us. I knew he knew, but would he take the next step? The answer was about to come. Lucas looked at me with that look he always had. I don't know what he saw in me, but he knew I was completely given over to him. And then he said, "Maria, we have to talk about what's happening. We can't ignore this anymore." My heart stopped. He was talking about what I knew, what everyone around us was starting to realize. He took a deep breath, and I felt like the decision he made at that moment would change everything for both of us. "I want you, Maria. I want more than your help with the work. I want to know how you feel. I want what we've never had before." I knew this was the chance. I knew that by taking this step, the line between the professional and the personal would disappear forever. What would I do? What would he do? And what would this mean for both of us, for our careers, for the future? I didn't know, but I knew there was no going back. The shadow of admiration had become a flame.